It was supposed to be just another hearing, a routine committee session, titled in dry bureaucratic language, "The Role of Government in Oversight of Digital Platforms." But by 10:03 a.m., over 3.2 million people were already watching the live stream, not because of the topic, but because everyone could feel it. Something was about to break. Inside the chamber, the air was tight. Stiff collars, folded arms, eyes darting across the room like soldiers before a firefight. The press gallery overflowed. Staffers whispered. Phones vibrated in pockets, but no one dared check. And at the center of it all, Congressman Jim Jordan, jaw-clenched, hand gripping the gavel like it was a weapon. The room didn't just hum, it crackled, as if the walls themselves knew something was coming, something loud, something uncontrollable. And across the aisle, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat motionless, calm, but watching and waiting. Jordan didn't waste a second. He slammed the gavel down hard. The sound cracked like a shot through the chamber. "We are living in a digital dictatorship," he growled. "Americans are being silenced, not by laws, not by courts, but by algorithms." His hands cut through the air like blades. His voice sharpened with every word. "This isn't moderation," he spat. "This is purging. This is ideological cleansing." Behind him, posters of redacted tweets and YouTube screenshots loomed like war trophies. The crowd behind him erupted. Some clapped. Others shouted, "Damn right." A few pounded the table with fists. Jordan wasn't holding a hearing, he was commanding a battlefield. But as the room swelled with noise, one camera slowly panned to the left. There, seated alone at the end of the aisle, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, silent, one hand resting on a red folder, her gaze steady. She didn't blink. She didn't move. And in that stillness, there was something louder than any shout. Readiness. The chamber was no longer a hearing room. It was a pressure cooker. And Jim Jordan kept turning the heat up. You don't silence voices because you disagree. You silence them when you're afraid of them. Fists hit wood. Not once, again and again. One congressman stood and shouted, "This is tyranny!" Another waved a printout like a flag. Voices layered over each other, not in debate, but in battle. A media frenzy was already underway. Cable news clips, tweets, live stream headlines. It was a script, and Jordan was following it word for word. The cameras ate it up. Every glare, every shout, every soundbite designed to trend. But amidst the noise, one figure remained untouched. Jasmine Crockett, unmoved, unimpressed, unshaken. While others played to the cameras, she prepared for the fallout. And still, she said nothing. Because when the performance ends, the facts begin. The shouting continued, but the camera found her. A slow zoom, frame by frame. Jasmine Crockett, still seated, still silent, but her fingers, they moved, just once. Slowly, deliberately, she placed her hand on the edge of a red folder. And for a split second, you could feel it. The whole room didn't know yet, but that camera, it caught something no one else did. Not a speech, not a reaction, a signal. Not of rage, but of precision. Her eyes locked forward, not on Jordan, not on the audience, but somewhere beyond the noise. Behind those calm eyes, something had already begun. She wasn't waiting for her turn. She was counting down to it. The silence wasn't hesitation. It wasn't fear. It was design. Jasmine Crockett wasn't watching the chaos. She was measuring it. While others raged for the cameras, she was listening for cracks in their armor. This wasn't her first hearing, not her first ambush. And if she'd learned anything from her courtroom days, it was this. You never interrupt a man who's busy digging his own hole. Every yell, every accusation was another brick in the wall he was building around himself. She didn't need to rush in and tear it down. She just had to wait until he sealed himself inside. That red folder wasn't just full of documents. It was a map, a timeline, a pressure point chart. Jordan thought he was controlling the room. But Jasmine wasn't here to win a moment. She was here to collapse a narrative, quietly, strategically. And when she finally spoke, it wouldn't be to respond. It would be to reveal that red folder. Everyone saw it. They assumed it held paper, charts, dates, testimonies. But they were wrong. What it held was time. Time Jasmine had spent combing through months of reports, court transcripts, deleted posts, backdated edits. She didn't need to open it because she'd already memorized every thread, every quote, every contradiction, every timeline the other side hoped no one would connect. Inside that red folder wasn't evidence. She was the evidence. What they didn't know was this Jasmine wasn't here to look prepared. She was here because she was prepared. While others shouted for truth, she had already filed it, cross-checked it, and carved it into memory. Not a performance, not a stunt. An operation. And when she opened her mouth, it wouldn't be opinion. It would be a reckoning. She didn't rise like a warrior. She rose like a verdict. Calm, controlled. No slamming fists, no fiery gestures. Just the weight of presence, like gravity had finally picked a side. "Mr. Chairman," she said, her voice smooth but cold, like glass that had been sharpened to cut. "If we're going to talk about censorship," she paused, "let's be honest about who's doing the silencing." Her tone didn't tremble, it didn't rise, it sliced. Every word placed with surgical precision. Across the aisle, Jordan leaned back just slightly. He didn't interrupt. Not because of protocol, because he recognized something. Not defiance, authority. Jasmine Crockett wasn't here to argue. She was here to end the illusion, one sentence at a time. The folders stayed closed, but the floodgates opened. "I have here," Jasmine said, her voice cool, almost detached, an internal Slack message from a senior content policy lead at Meta dated 6 weeks before the midterms. She didn't read it with emotion. She read it like a surgeon reading a diagnosis, precise, clinical, fatal. Per the congressman's request, we flagged the post. He was very concerned about the narrative getting out of control. A few heads turned. Jordan shifted in his seat. "Here's another," she said, flipping a page. "An email from a White House media advisor, subject line, request for post-suppression." She paused, letting that sink in. "You call this censorship?" Her voice cut sharper now. "Let's see who's really silencing who." Then she dropped the final blow. "I have a recording, a closed-door meeting 3 months ago where a senior committee staffer is caught saying, 'If we let that clip stay up, it'll kill the bill.' Just tell them it violates standards." Gasps. Whispering. One aide dropped their pen. Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply looked up and stared Jordan straight in the eye. The silence that followed was very different than before. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like impact. No one spoke. Not the aides, not the press, not the members who were just chanting minutes earlier. For once in a room built for talking, no one had words. Jim Jordan, the man who came in swinging, barking about digital tyranny and big tech conspiracies, now sat perfectly still. Not because he was defeated, but because he had been unmasked. His outrage, once volcanic, now seemed rehearsed, hollow. This wasn't the story he planned to headline, but it was the story the public had just seen. Jasmine Crockett didn't gloat, didn't raise her voice. She simply gathered her papers, clicked the pen shut, and sat back down. One camera zoomed in, caught the exact moment Jordan looked down and didn't look back up. And in that stillness, America felt something shift. The woman they ignored at the start of the hearing had just rewritten it. The silence from the chamber hadn't even settled when the next blow landed. It didn't come from Jasmine this time. It came from a former Twitter trust and safety executive. And it came with receipts. A new recording leaked, time-stamped, authenticated. In the clip, a voice unmistakably matching Jim Jordan's is heard speaking on a private call with a content policy lead. The request, "That post needs to go. It's dangerous. It's stirring up sentiment that'll tank our messaging." He wasn't talking about hate speech. He wasn't flagging violence. He was talking about a progressive challenger's campaign ad. The voice on the tape continues, "Just say it violates brand integrity or ad policy or whatever, but it can't stay up." And then silence, followed by the words, "Understood, Congressman. We'll take care of it." The clip played across 3 networks before noon. Jordan's office issued a one-line response: "We do not comment on unverified recordings." But it was too late. A second whistleblower stepped forward, a former YouTube employee, confirming the incident and offering internal emails that mirrored the same pattern: suppression, pressure, politics disguised as moderation. And just like that, the man who cried censorship was now the face of it. The shift didn't happen in the headlines. It started in the comment sections. Wait, is this real? So he was the one asking for posts to be removed. I thought he was the victim. From Florida diners to Portland book clubs, across timelines and talk shows, the question spread like wildfire. Have we been lied to? Conservative voters, not all, but enough, began to squint at the man they once cheered for. His voice now sounded hollow, his anger too rehearsed. People started replaying clips, looking not just at what he said, but how he said it. Meanwhile, Jasmine's words from the hearing resurfaced. Let's be honest about who's doing the silencing. The internet turned that into a mantra. T-shirts, memes, protest signs held by people who had never even heard her name a week ago. Jim Jordan had spent years warning America about the beast at the gates. And now they were starting to wonder, was he the one holding the leash? By the next morning, the recordings had hit every major network. Commentators debated. Podcasters dissected every syllable. And Jim Jordan snapped. He stormed into a press briefing, face flushed, papers clutched in one hand. "This is nonsense," he barked. "A hit job, a smear campaign. That audio is a deep fake." Reporters blinked. One tried to ask, "But Congressman," the voice analyst's Jordan cut her off. "I don't care what some tech nerd in California says. This is war, and they want to silence us." His voice cracked, not with passion, but with panic. Cameras caught it. And the internet exploded again, but this time not with outrage, with doubt. Why's he yelling if it's not true? He sounds guilty. Deep fake? That's the best you've got? The comment sections turned against him. The same people who once chanted his name now typed things like, "Man's unraveling live on TV." And somewhere in Dallas, Jasmine Crockett watched it unfold, silent, still, like she had always known this moment was coming. It started with a single tweet. A clip from Jasmine's speech, just 27 seconds long, posted with 3 words, "She didn't flinch." By the end of the hour, it had 80,000 retweets. By nightfall, a movement. Hashtag Crockett exposed the game. Hashtag red folder. Hashtag truth is louder. They weren't just hashtags, they were headlines. TikTok edits, street murals, college lectures opening with her quote. In a single day, Jasmine Crockett went from that freshman congresswoman from Texas to a national voice people didn't just listen to, they amplified. A Gen Z influencer made a remix of her speech. A retired veteran in Ohio mailed her a handwritten letter with the words, "You said what I've wanted to say for years." Even late-night hosts dropped their sarcasm and just played the clip. No jokes, no punchlines, just her voice. Calm, sharp, unapologetic. And America, from teenagers in Detroit to elders in Mississippi, leaned in. It wasn't pundits, it wasn't blue-check influencers, it was the people. A 74-year-old grandma from Kansas tweeted, "First time in my life I've heard a congresswoman speak exactly what I feel. Thank you, Miss Crockett. I thought I was invisible." A high school teacher from Atlanta posted a black and white photo of his civics class watching Jasmine's speech captioned, "We paused the curriculum today." The truth was louder. A veteran with PTSD uploaded a 2-minute video, voice shaking. "I served this country so people could speak freely." Jasmine Crockett reminded me what that looks like. An 11-year-old girl on TikTok lip-synced the moment Jasmine said, "You want truth? Then stop hiding from it." And it hit millions. Something was happening. Not just a moment, a shift. Ordinary Americans, black, white, brown, old, young, retired, working class, began saying what many had kept inside. "I didn't know we were allowed to speak like this. I didn't know Congress had anyone like her. She said it better than I ever could, but I've felt it for years." And just like that, one woman's voice became a million echoes. Just 48 hours ago, they called her a far-left firebrand with a loud mouth. Now CNN, Crockett emerges as unlikely voice of reason amid chaos. New York Times, the woman in red who dismantled the hearing. Fox News, reluctantly, Crockett's folder sparks bipartisan debate. Even anchors who used to mock her name now leaned in with unexpected respect. One MSNBC commentator admitted on air, "Look, I didn't take her seriously at first, but today she made Congress look like adults again." On conservative radio, callers phoned in not to fight her, but to acknowledge her clarity. "I'm a lifelong Republican," said one caller from Tulsa, "but what she said, I felt that. She didn't scream, she didn't grandstand, she just told the damn truth." For once, it wasn't the spin that won, it was the spine. The red folder had cracked something open, and no amount of rebranding could put it back in the box. Jasmine wasn't a firebrand anymore, she was a mirror. And the country was finally looking at its reflection. Within 72 hours of Jasmine's viral takedown, Jim Jordan filed a formal motion calling for an ethics investigation. His claim, possible breach of classified materials, improper handling of internal communications, political grandstanding on government time. Translation, she embarrassed him. By Monday morning, anonymous sources at the White House told press outlets Crockett's behavior warrants scrutiny at the highest level. Cable news debated whether she'd crossed a line or simply drawn one too clearly. Behind closed doors, opposition leaders whispered plans to censure her or even strip her of committee roles. But the pressure didn't stop there. Local politicians in her district began receiving requests from donors to distance themselves. Headlines shifted again. Crockett under fire from both sides. White House tightens grip on viral congresswoman. Did she go too far? The machine had been activated. Washington was doing what it always does, punishing the person who told the truth too well. But this time, they weren't just up against Jasmine. They were up against everyone who had watched her and finally felt seen. The camera turned, but this time it wasn't on Jordan. It was on the seats that were supposed to stand with Jasmine, and they were empty. Or worse, occupied by people now staring at their phones. A few had spoken up in private, "We agree with her, but it's too hot right now." Others, they went on TV. "We believe in oversight," said one senator. But Congresswoman Crockett's tone was divisive. Divisive, the word politicians use when someone says something true that makes them uncomfortable. Cable panels began shifting their tone. Has Crockett alienated her own party? Is she too bold to be effective? Commentators speculated she'd burned bridges, when in fact, Jasmine had simply refused to lie. And now the cost of truth wasn't just pushback, it was isolation. The woman who once stood surrounded by applause was now surrounded by silence. But in her eyes, no fear, just a quiet vow. If standing alone means standing for truth, then I've never stood taller. The headline said she was cornered. The analysts called it political suicide. But when Jasmine Crockett stood before the cameras, there was no apology, no backtracking, no "let me clarify." Just one sentence. If I'm punished for telling the truth, then maybe this seat doesn't deserve me. The room froze, not because of the volume, but because of the clarity. She wasn't defending herself, she was defending the standard. In that moment, Crockett reminded America that Congress isn't supposed to reward obedience. It's supposed to protect truth. Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. She looked directly into the lens and said, "I didn't come here to play safe politics. I came here to serve people who've been silenced too long, and I won't be part of the silence machine." That clip alone, 40 seconds long, would be watched by over 42 million Americans in just 4 days. And in that short speech, Jasmine didn't just defend herself, she redefined what courage looks like in the face of power. This time there were no raised voices, no finger pointing, no gavel slammed in rage, just one chair and one voice. Jasmine Crockett was given 3 minutes, not much, but this time no one dared interrupt, not after what happened last time. She took the mic, looked around the room slowly. The silence wasn't heavy, it was earned. I've been called too bold, too angry, too divisive. Maybe that's what truth sounds like when people aren't used to hearing it. The camera didn't blink, neither did she. Last month, I sat right here and exposed evidence many didn't want to see. And instead of asking how it happened, some tried to punish the messenger. Eyes dropped. Pens stopped scribbling. Even Jordan sat still, arms crossed, jaw clenched. But let me be clear. I'm not here to win popularity contests. I'm here to protect democracy, even when it makes people uncomfortable. And with that, her 3 minutes were up. But the impact, it echoed far beyond the chamber walls. She could have ended it quietly. She had already made her point. But Jasmine Crockett understood something deeper. Moments like this don't come twice. So she stood, slowly, deliberately. The folder was closed, the mic was hers. And the silence, it waited. I've learned something in these halls. The louder someone yells, the more they're usually hiding. She didn't look at Jordan, she didn't have to. The cameras caught the room, faces frozen, hands still. Then the line that would echo across headlines, classrooms, podcasts, and history books. History doesn't remember who screamed the loudest. It remembers who spoke the truth at the exact moment it needed to be heard. A pause, long enough to breathe it in. I'm not here to win power. I'm here to expose the abuse of it. With that, she walked away. No applause, no anthem, just impact. And a nation that now saw silence not as weakness, but as strategy. And the truth not as partisan, but as something worth defending, no matter who it exposes. What started as a 3-minute statement in Congress became a lesson plan in middle schools. A clip of Jasmine Crockett's final words went viral not just on political blogs or cable news, but on TikTok, in classrooms, on church projectors. One teacher in Ohio said, My 8th graders asked to analyze her speech instead of the textbook. A librarian in Atlanta painted her words across the children's wing. Silence isn't neutral. Sometimes it's complicity. The phrase hit a nerve, because people weren't just watching history, they were becoming a part of it. She didn't just speak truth to power, one podcast host said. She exposed the lie hiding behind it. Parents printed her words. Veterans quoted her on Facebook. Even late-night hosts, usually sarcastic, paused to replay her voice. And in a classroom in Detroit, a student stood up and said, "She didn't yell, but somehow I still felt it in my bones." The movement had begun, not as a trend, but as a transformation. In a world drowning in noise, the quiet voice that speaks truth, not rage, can move mountains. Jasmine Crockett didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She listened. She waited. She struck. And when she did, she reminded us of something we're too quick to forget. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the calm before a revolution. In a time where power shouts and truth is censored, we need more people who speak not for applause, but for justice. Let this story remind us, it's not about being loud. It's about being right and being brave enough to say it when it counts. If this story moved you, if you believe truth still matters, and if you're tired of power being louder than justice, then hit subscribe to AZ Exposed. This is where silence ends, and the truth gets its voice back.